Good afternoon, everyone. If I could call this special council meeting to order. The first item is declarations of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none. Item 3 is an adjournment to a public meeting for the purpose of conducting a public meeting under the Planning Act, and it's to deal with Zone Change Application Z12-21 for 7 and 9 Cobourg Street. Mover for such, Councillor Burback, seconded Councillor Ingram. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. I'll now call this public meeting to order, and the purpose of this meeting is to give council and the public an opportunity to hear all interested persons with respect to Zone Change Application Z12-21. The application affects the properties with the municipal addresses of 7 and 9 Cobourg Street in the city of Stratford. The purpose of this public meeting is as follows. The order of procedure for this public meeting is as follows. Staff will present the application. The applicant or their agent will then make a presentation. Council may ask questions for the purposes of clarifying the application, but are cautioned not to make comments nor take a position on this application at this public meeting. Registered delegations will be asked for their presentations, comments, and questions. Questions and comments from the Q&A section of the meeting will be read in by a member of the clerk's office. The public's advised that if a person has not provided council with oral submissions at a public meeting or written submissions before a bylaw is adopted or a decision is made, the Ontario Land Tribunal has the power to dismiss an appeal. The public is also advised that comments expressed and written material presented are a matter of public record for full disclosure. Are there any questions as to this order of procedure? Seeing none, we'll now proceed with the meeting, and we'll hear from staff with respect to the application. And I'd invite forward now staff planner Rachel Bossy to present the application. Ms. Bossy.
Thank you, Your Worship. So an application was received for 7 and 9 Cobourg Street to permit residential uses on the main floor. So the lands are zoned central commercial, C3, and they're looking to add the additional use to the zone. The subject lands are located on the south side of Cobourg Street between Erie Street and Waterloo Street South. The lands are currently each being used as an inn. At this time, it's proposed that the properties will continue to be used as inns, and the lands are surrounded by a mixed-use commercial, a park, and apartment dwellings. So this is a picture of the subject land. So 9 Cobourg is located on the left, and 7 Cobourg is located on the right.
Your presentation isn't, yeah, it's just coming. Okay, there it is.
Okay, do you see the subject lands view?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So this is a sketch of the site, and this is the existing site features. No exterior changes are proposed to the site at this time. So the subject lands are designated as downtown core and are located within the heritage area in the official plan. So the policies permit a range of retail and residential uses. So residential uses are permitted in mixed-use developments, upper stories of commercial buildings, or in freestanding structures. And the property is within the Heritage Conservation District designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and no exterior changes are proposed at this time to the site. So the lands are zoned central commercial and are located within the Central Business District. So the C3 zone permits a variety of uses, including dwelling units above the first story, where the first story is designed, used, or intended for commercial uses. So the request would allow a dwelling unit within the main floor, and 1 parking space per dwelling unit will be required, and the applicant would be proposing 1 dwelling unit on each property. And so staff are working with the applicant to ensure parking is adequately addressed. So for agency comments, the clerk's division just noted that they have no concern if the minimum parking requirements are met, and building just advised that building permits will be required to change the use. 2 public comments were received from 1 individual, just making sure that there's adequate parking on the site. And then they noted that there's an existing wood burning fireplace at 9 Cobourg, and they just noted that they have concerns with its impacts on the air quality of the adjacent apartment units. So the next steps from here will be receive feedback at this meeting. And then we're going to go back and then make sure we have all of the comments from all of the agencies. And then we're going to be preparing a recommendation. And then we'll be coming back to Planning and Heritage Committee with a report. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions for me at this time, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Are there any questions for Ms. Bossy from members of council at this time? Ms. Bossy, it's a rudimentary question. Council has no jurisdiction over wood fireplaces, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Okay, if there's nothing else for Ms. Bossy at this time, we'll now invite forward Scott Patterson from Patterson Planning Consultants, and he'll be followed by Robert Lemon, the owner of the property, as they make their presentation. So Mr. Patterson and Mr. Lemon.
In the public.
Mr. Patterson.
I am the planning.
Thank you.
Mayor Matheson, can you hear me?
I can now, yes.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Matheson, council, staff, and the public. Thank you for the opportunity to briefly speak to you this evening about this application. As noted, I am the planning consultant retained by the property owner to assist in facilitating the approvals for a zoning bylaw amendment to allow an additional permitted use on the property in the C3 zoning. As noted, the site is currently 2 individual properties, being 7 and 9 Cobourg Street, and the properties are currently utilized as an inn, as defined by the zoning bylaw, with an owner's dwelling unit also existing in 9 Cobourg. As Ms. Bossy had indicated, no physical changes are proposed to the building, and for the time being, there would be no change in the operation of the buildings as an inn. The landowner wishes to have an additional permitted use of dwelling added to the zoning for each property. A dwelling would allow for 1 or more dwelling units. Again, we just wish to make clear for council that no physical changes are proposed at this time that are not already progressing through building permits issued by the city. The change is simply to add an additional permitted use to have a site-specific zoning on each parcel to allow a dwelling. Each of the abutting properties have a site-specific zoning already, being C3-1 for the 4-story residential building at 1 Erie Street, and C3-4 for the 9-story condominium building next door at 11 Cobourg Street. Currently, 7 and 9 Cobourg Street are the only properties along this portion of Cobourg that do not have or have the ability to have a dwelling at ground level. We believe it is reasonable to allow an additional permitted use of dwelling for each property, as this will allow the landowner some flexibility going forward. Again, though, the intent is not that this will occur immediately. The landowner intends to continue operating the buildings as an inn as long as that is viable going forward. We look forward to working with staff to address any comments or concerns that come forward and bringing this back to council with a staff report and recommendation. In the meantime, though, if there are any questions or concerns from council, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Do members of council at this time have any questions? Seeing none, Mr. Lemon, are you on the line?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm actually in Vancouver, and just a little bit about me. I am an architect, a retired architect, and have come to Stratford every year since 1962 and have enjoyed Stratford so much that I want to retire there. So 2 years ago, I purchased both 7 and 9 Cobourg Street, admiring the architecture. particularly, and the Tower House, I think, is a remarkable piece of modern architecture. And I'm working with the local architectural conservancy to create a modernist walking tour of Stratford. So 2 years ago, with the enthusiasm of a vibrant festival theater season, it seemed logical to have an inn and to attract guests to come and stay in Stratford. But with the pandemic and the slowdown of construction work, it's only recently that the renovations of number 9, which will be where my residence upstairs as the owner of the inn, or the resident owner, have been completed in August. In fact, staff have been very good at overseeing the work, and it just recently got an occupancy permit. So of course I've missed 2 theater seasons, and with very few bookings at all in the number 7. And the reason for adding this dwelling use is that should the future see the need to use it as a single family residence rather than an inn, I'd like to have that ability to have some flexibility, as Mr. Patterson said, in the future. And so there's no change planned for right now. And hopefully next summer's theater and music season will be more robust and will be successful in operation.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of council at this time for either Mr. Lemon or Mr. Patterson? Okay. Are there any members of the public who wish to have a question raised? And I'll turn it over to the clerk's office to let us know.
Through your worship, at this time, there are no comments that have been submitted through the Q&A function.
All right, we have no comments expressed, and we have no other delegations scheduled. Members of council, I'll ask just a final time if you have any questions of staff or the applicant. And seeing none, I will now give, if the applicant would like to make any closing comments before we wrap up the meeting.
Scott? I have no further comments as the owner.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. City Council intends to consider this application at a future Planning and Heritage Committee meeting, where members of council will have an opportunity for full discussion of the application after reviewing comments received from the public at this time. If anyone would like to receive further information or notice of this application, please email clerks@stratford.ca. A video of this meeting will be posted to the city's website, and I'll now declare that this public meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Council will now reconvene, and there are the reading of the bylaws, and there's one bylaw at this time, and it's bylaw 4.1, which is the confirmatory bylaw. Moved by Councillor Vasilakos and seconded by Councillor Ingram. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. To read the confirmatory bylaw a third and final time, moved by Councillor Gaffney and seconded by Councillor Beattie. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. And finally, adjournment of this afternoon's special council meeting, Councillor Clifford and Councillor Burback. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. Thank you and good evening, everyone.